Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I am so excited to welcome Bill Blankschaen. Did I say that correctly?
You said it correctly. Well done, Kim.
Yay,
Yeah.
I usually mess it up. To the show. Today we're going to talk about lead with a story. And I think in today's world, there has not been enough taught to entrepreneurs, professionals, coaches, and speakers on the power of story. So I am excited for today's conversation because I think it's an underrated tool that people don't use. And yet, it's one of the best ways to connect with your audience, with potential clients on social media. So, Bill, I am so excited for today's conversation.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I love talking about stories and storytelling and how to leverage that to build your platform, build your brand, build your business, and get your message out to the world. So glad to be here.
So, Bill is the founder and chief story architect of Story Builders, and I love delicious titles. So, Chief Story Architect. And he has a creative team of storytellers who share his passion for helping people live a story worth telling and serving them with excellence in genuine, high trust relationships. Story Builders tell stories that make the world a better place by creating compelling books and learning experiences that turn ideas into greater impact, influence, and income. Bill, I want to dive into your 5 step, but just quickly, can you share a little bit with me about how you became the chief story architect of Story Builders?
I certainly can. And I will keep this brief, but I'm going to rewind and go back to when I was a kid. When I was a child, I love stories. I love storytellings. I read all the time. I was the kid that read the front and back of the cereal box 5 times every morning, right? Just soaking up words. And then as I got older, life kind of pulls us in different directions. And so I ended up getting involved in education, helped start a private school, ended up teaching a lot of storytelling, developing curriculum, all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, I wasn't doing writing. I wasn't doing storytelling, which I really felt called to do. And so eventually I stepped away from that, which is a fun story in its own, with 6 kids and no income for a year, to pursue this new path. Worked harder than I'd ever worked. And now, 12 years later, been able to work with some really cool people along the way, a lot of them to help develop their story. Because what I realized is that people often have a really compelling story that they either don't value, or they can't put it clearly into words. Like maybe that's not their gift, but they have a great message to share with the world. And so we come alongside them. And what I learned how to do is come alongside them, help them get clarity on that message. How do you say it well? How do you share that message then with the world in a way that's really compelling? And that's what we do at Story Builders. We come alongside people who have a message and want to share it, but either don't have the time or don't have the gifts or whatever the case may be, and really just bring it to life for them in a way that makes the world a better place.
I love it, Bill. I was like you. I was the kid who was always reading.
Yes.
So, quick story. Uh, my mom died when I was 4, so I was raised by my dad. But my dad would lie on the couch and I'd be lying on him and we'd both be reading books. And I
Mm,
always read books that were way above my reading level.
sure. Sure.
And I would interrupt my dad, Dad, what does this word mean? He's like, I'm trying to read my book. Come on, Dad, tell me. He's like, I wish you'd stop reading books that were so hard for you. But the other ones are boring,
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. And the funny thing is, Kim, for many, 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 many years, I just thought everybody has this same love for words and everybody can
Mm,
read it. Everybody has this. And it wasn't until I think it was Marcus Buckingham's book, Now Discover Your Strengths, that I read that and did that assessment and realized there was this strength called input that I had that
mm,
can it enabled me to hold a lot of information suspended in midair, if you will, and be able to absorb it and hold it and work with it. And it was a unique talent, a unique gift, and not everybody
mm.
has that. They have other gifts and other talents. And so once I realized that, I realized, I love to do that. If I could lean into that, I could help a lot of people in that way.
That is so cool. I haven't taken that test. I'm wondering where I would sit on that scale.
Yeah, it's a helpful test. It more give you some kind of general themes of where your
Mhm.
strengths might lie.
That is cool. Bill, you said something at the beginning there, and before you get into your 5 steps, I just want to just touch on this. You said something very interesting. You said people don't believe they have a story.
Hmm.
And I think that is one of the crucial things that
Yep,
actually stop people from telling their story.
sure,
And when you look at people like professionals, consultants, speakers, coaches, the audience of Author to Authority podcast,
sure,
they don't think they have a story.
sure,
We're both publishers, so we both deal with people,
sure,
where, our books are a lot of teaching, training, but we always also tell people stories
sure,
in those books.
sure.
And so many times I've had clients like, well, I don't have a story to tell. And I'm like, yeah,
Right,
you
right,
do.
right,
You
right.
just don't
Yeah,
know it. And so
yeah.
we spend time to figure out, what is the story behind the book. Have you found that to be true as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's part of our condition as humans. We undervalue what feels normal to us, right? We're used to our story, and so we figure there's nothing special about it. And it's true. I think as some of the wisdom literature says, there's nothing new under the sun, right? But in fact there is, if whatever it is told through the lens of your story, because your
Yes.
story as it has unfolded has never happened before. It's new. It's the details are different. Your failures, your successes, your experiences, your highs, your lows, all of that, the lessons you've learned from it gives you a unique lens through which you view things, right? And
Yes.
so it's not just about creating books, although I think you and I both do that all day every day. But then how can you help other people, right? And that's where we develop
Yeah.
learning experiences, because often people we work with, they have a book and we help them create digital courses or workshops or trainings or programs. We work with people like John Maxwell and Kevin Harrington. We work with Zig Ziglar's family and so forth, to really, all right, how can you position those ideas to then walk other people through to do what you have done and learn what you have learned, so you can pass on those things, right? And so that's
Yeah.
where I think really a lot of the magic happens, is taking those ideas, turning them into something really cool.
Boy, I think you and I have shared some of the same path because, it's the same thing here at RTI Publishing. We might do it from a slightly different angle. When I work with the professionals, consultants, speakers, one of the well, two of the things we do is we develop out their thought leadership. So how do they express who they are, what they do, and how they can make a change in somebody's life in a way that's concrete, succinct, easy to say. And then we expand
Right.
that out into a book. But
Right.
the other thing is their story. So we combine all of those together in a sense to create, something that's cohesive
Yep.
so that their
Totally.
story matches their message, it matches their values, it's
Totally.
relatable to their target market. So I think you and I have a lot in common there, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share. I just happen to have this on my desk. This is a book that we're publishing. A awesome gentleman, Brock Mealer, comes out August, September. But it's such an incredible story where he was in an auto accident that took his father and a friend's life, and he was left paralyzed from the waist down. And anyway, so it's a story of his recovery. But it isn't just the recovery; it's what can you learn from that, and that's where I
Yeah.
think the value is, that unique experience, extracting lessons that other people can use to make the world a better place. So I agree. I think you and I spend a lot of our time helping people do just that.
When you say that, it reminds me, we released a book in January by Dave Sanderson, and he's an international speaker. But his story, his story is unique in the fact that he was on the Miracle on the Hudson, the plane that landed
Oh,
in
wow.
the Hudson River.
Wow.
And so, his books are about well, this third book is about the plane landing and then what happened, whatever. The second book is the whole time, and the first book, which we didn't do, was sort of before. So
Wow. Sure.
everything kind of intersects when that plane went down. But
Sure.
the three books look at it from the three different angles: before, during, and afterwards. And he shares all the lessons that he learned. all the lessons that he learned that help him to survive,
Right.
but then the lessons that he learned afterwards that has enabled him to thrive, where, other people
Yeah.
gave up, like they became victims, like it it destroyed their life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this was a wake up call, man. I got
Mm.
things to say and I better get to
Yeah.
saying them. And so, it it is powerful when you share your story. And we don't realize how much sharing our stories
Mm.
can create that connection, can really change people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, as long as there have been people, there have been stories. Right?
Yes.
That's timeless, right? And so there are in storytelling, there are, you know, guidelines and principles and practices that have been used for thousands of years that if we use them as leaders or in our spheres of influence and in how we tell what we tell, whether we're putting a book together or a learning experience or just a memo to the team or giving a keynote, whatever the case would be, there are these things that are the same for everybody, and that's where we develop what we call our storytelling structure, because the power of story is that if you do it intentionally and do it well, it resonates, it's sticky. People then live differently as a result of that.
I love how you said intentionally,
Mm.
because
Yeah,
it's not just about telling any story, it's about telling the right story to the right person in the right moment. So,
yeah.
Bill, we're going to
And the
shift.
story will look different to different people
Yes.
at different times, and the same story
Yeah.
can be told many different ways. Absolutely.
Well, it's funny. Our pastor at our church once decided to survey the congregation after he had preached a sermon to find out what did they get out of the
Mm.
sermon. And everybody got something different, and
Mm.
most of it was not even related to his sermon in any. And he's like, "That's the last time I do that because it was actually scourging." But you were so
Right.
right. Like every story is going to resonate.
Yeah.
Bill, I want to shift gears because I want to give you lots of time, and at the end we're going to talk about publishing, and I won't ask you the normal question because I think we'll have the publisher conversation
Sure.
today.
Sure.
But Bill, I would love for you to share your 5 steps to creating that story.
Sure, sure. I would love to. So our storytelling structure is really a structure that you can use to create any kind of compelling content. It could be a blog post, could be a social media post, could be a book, could be a chapter of a book, could be a learning experience, whatever that case might be. Again, it just relies on the rhythms of storytelling that we as humans have used for thousands of years. And so there's 5 steps to this process. So step number one, attention. Attention. First, you have to get people's attention. You need to
Yes.
draw them in some way. Now, in order to do that, you actually have to give thought to what do these people want? What does my audience want? Where are they at? So, a lot of people, when they speak or they say something or they share something, it's coming from what they want and what they're
Mm,
thinking and what they want to put out in the world without much thought as to what is it that they want. So the thing you have to be careful with this though is a lot of people try to get attention in an inauthentic way.
mm,
I remember I had a conversation with somebody. I was working with them on a project, and they were doing a social media post, and they were you even the 15 minutes that we've been talking. You got the idea. I'm probably not the get the crowd riled up, cheerlead, dance on the stage kind of guy, right? I'm just more reserved. And so, but they were saying, hey, here's what you need to do on social media. You need to jump around. You need to wave your hands. You need to act zany because that's what gets people's attention. And I just looked at him like, do you not know me by now? That's just not natural to me. If that's you, that's fine. That's great. Do it. But it wasn't natural to me. And so
mhm.
if I had done that and attracted attention and then people got to know me, they would say, hey, there's a disconnect here. That's not
Yeah.
authentic you. And so you don't want to get attention in an inauthentic way because eventually that will come back on you when people realize, wait, that's not really you. Right. So
Yeah.
whatever that is, let's just say it's a blog post, for example, getting someone's attention. Give thought to what is it that that person wants? What is it my audience wants? And maybe it's a compelling question or a stat or a story, something like that that really grabs them and pulls them in. So that's step number one is really think, how do I get someone's attention in an authentic way.
Mhm. I love it. I love it. You know, when you were talking about that authentic way, I think, you also has to be authentic to your target market or your audience or who you're
Sure,
speaking to.
sure,
For me, I deal with very high level professionals, a lot like you,
sure,
right? So if I got on social media and I was jumping up and down and waving my hands and all that, you're
sure.
not going to see me as a
Good point.
professional. You're just going to think I'm a quack,
Right,
right?
right.
So
Yeah.
not only authentic to you, but I think it also has to be authentic to your audience.
Oh, I completely agree. One of the awesome people I work with, Lewis Howes. Lewis has a big social media presence, and I got to tell you, I know him pretty well at this point. And what you see on social media is what you get behind the scenes and on his show. Like, it's the same person,
Yes.
and his audience expects that, and that's his audience, right? So you're absolutely right. Not only do he, whoever, has to be authentic to who they are, it needs to be something that actually resonates and connects with his audience, right? So if his audience was like, no, we want someone who's like all over the place and jumping up and down and doing, all right, well, then it's probably not going to be a fit, right? So that's a great point. But um, the second step in this process, so attention is one, you got to get people's attention, but the second step thing you need to think about is, what is the tension? So attention and
Mm,
the tension. What is the problem that I'm trying to solve? And really, again, this goes back to your audience. What is the problem that they have that I'm trying to solve? Right. So you got to put yourself in the shoes of the audience and think, what is their problem? What's their pain point? Because you may have a compelling story, but unless you show me how it connects to my story, I'm not going to be as interested in it. Right. So telling everything from that perspective, and that tension could be um, tangible things, like things you
mm,
can touch and feel, like money or time or whatever the case may be, barriers that are keeping me from getting what I want. But they can also be intangible, and this is where it gets really deeper, right? They could be more psychological, or fears, or questioning your own worth, or these kind of things that maybe we don't talk about much, as much as we should, but we all have them at different points, right? And so this is where I find it's helpful not to discourage people or go so deep on negative that they just close the book or shut down the blog post or whatever and go away, but they need to know that you understand what is
yeah.
that pain, what is that resistance, right? So I like to say, often we run from our problems and run from that tension, but in fact, those mountains, right, those difficult areas are what really make the most compelling stories, right? So instead of running from them, let's embrace them and call them out and put a spotlight on them and say, this is important to acknowledge what those problems are.
It's funny you say that because when I share my story, I start out with the fact my mom died when I was 4,
Mm,
but then I go into what my story. I call my story "The Power of Words" because at 7 years old, I was told by a teacher that I should not write because I wasn't a good writer.
mm,
And so the story is about, being told those words, how I carried them for 30 years, how, I mean, I passed high school, I got A's in English,
sure,
like,
sure,
but I never wrote. I never wrote the
sure,
things in my heart, right?
sure.
And so how the power of words trapped me, but also the power of words set me free.
Yeah,
And again, so not everybody has had their dad die,
yeah,
but many people have had that experience of someone speaking something into their life
sure.
that just derailed them. And
Yeah,
the funny thing is I didn't even remember those words
yeah.
until about 2011. And I
Mm,
God inspired crisis point, and I
mm,
had to deal with those words.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, sometimes we think, well, our story is unique and it won't relate. Well, okay, so most people have not had my experiences,
right.
but most people can relate to feeling having someone say something to them and put them down and not believe in them. So I couldn't agree with you more, Bill.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great example, and it's a great example. It's a great segue into the third point, actually. So well done, because the third point is
There, Bill.
connection. Yeah. Well, the third point is connection, and that's what you just described there. One component of that is that you're able to illustrate and demonstrate to people, hey, if you've had people put you down with words, if you've had people do that to you, I know how that feels. I have felt that. I have dealt with it. I can go through that, all those kind of things. I think of so many people that we work with, right? So who've had these kind of situations where, hey, if that's you, I know that pain, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be whatever content you're creating. It doesn't have to be a long, if it's a book, it may have more of this, right? You're probably
Mhm.
going to want to explain, how is it that I know? You're going to want to talk about that experience. Or if you're trying to connect with an audience of people who have lost parents at a young age, you're uniquely positioned to speak to that. So letting them know, essentially, I feel your pain, and here's why. That's one component of connection. But the other component of connection is not just you feel their pain, but you actually have the credentials to show them a way forward, right?
Yes.
So if all of your story was, my teacher said I couldn't write, so I don't write. That wouldn't be much of a story. But for you to
We
say,
wouldn't
hey,
be doing this podcast.
yeah, I know. So you could say, for now, you can say, hey, I understand your pain, and I've written these books, I've done this, so I've gone from A to Z. I'm on the other, it can be done. And I'm the one who can help you do that, right? So it's setting you up as that trusted
Mm,
guide on this journey, setting you up to kind of walk that pathway in a way that people are nodding and saying, okay, I'm not only am I open to hearing what you say, it sounds like you might have something of value to say to me. And so I'm listening, right? And communicating that. And if it's in a blog post, it can be really quick explanation. If it's in a book, it could be the bulk of a chapter or whatever the case may be, right? So it depends on the format, but that's really the essence of that connection piece there.
number 4.
Number 4 leads right into solution.
Mm,
What is the solution that you're offering them, right? So you've got their attention, you've identified the problem, you've connected with them. Now they're like, all right, tell me what to do. What's the answer here? If this is a book, big picture book, then that's the main message of the book. Of this is the solution I'm offering. I think of one of our awesome story partners, Greg Cagle. We've worked with him for many years, developed several books. One of them is called The Four Dimensions of Culture, right? How leaders shape culture in their organization. And what we've done with him is develop with him and with John Maxwell resources to help people apply those, right? So what we
mm,
created this 4 dimensions of culture that really visually brings the solution to life, right? And that's a key element. So you want to have the solution, something that you can give people that says, this is the path to follow. These are the steps. So
yeah.
a couple components that I found to be true about this. One, you want to name it, if at all possible. Name the solution. Give it a unique name. Just naming something makes it something, right?
Mhm.
Something sticky to talk about. But then the second component of that is, once you name it, then give it a process, a system, a visual representation, if you can, to really bring that to life. Also, I'm working on a book right now where we're talking about a cycle that people can go through and steps in the process and so forth. But giving it framework and definition. Now, as I'm sure you know, Kim, in order to get that, you got to dive into some complexity to end up with
Yes.
simplicity on the other side, right? You've got to
Yes.
get into the mess and get your hands
Oh,
dirty with the words in order to come out on the other side of that. But to me, it's worth it, right? When you're able to go through that and come out with something that feels not only like a comprehensive solution, but it's simple and sticky that people can run with.
okay. We're starting to get low on time, so I won't
Number
make any
5.
comments on that one. Step
Number number
5.
number 5 is action. Number 5 is
Yes.
action. So we've got attention, tension, connection, solution, and action. Pretty much, what do you want people to do? Right? If it's a blog post, what do you want your reader to do? Do you want to leave a comment? Do you want to do something different in their life? If it's a chapter, what do you want them to do with what they've read? So many times I see people put something good out there and then just leave it with, well, what do you want me to do with that? And that was interesting, but okay. And we live in a busy, fast-paced world, easily distracted. So if I don't have something tangible that I'm called to do with that or connect with or something like that, then I probably won't, right? And so for
Mhm.
for you as a speaker or an author or writer, it may be obvious to you the next step to take. But you have to realize, again, thinking of your audience, it might not be so obvious to them. So put all those 5 steps together and you can create some really compelling content regardless of the medium you're working in.
Teach the create method, and the E in create is engage and educate. But when I talk about engagement, obviously you want your writing to be engaging,
Sure.
but I share about the fact that you have to engage the audience by telling them what to do next. So if they're reading your book and you don't give them options to connect with you,
Sure.
guess what? They've read their book, and what do? They put
Right.
that thing down and they forget about you. So,
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
have to tell them and direct them
Yeah.
to what you want them to do next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great component. Like a lot of our story partners who create learning experiences in their books, they like to put things, hey, here's a QR code, here's a link, some way of following up with me in order to, because that's where a lot of the authors can make money with books, even at a higher
Mhm.
level, is next level coaching services or speaking or whatever the case may be, workshops, trainings, all those kind of fun stuff. But yeah, given thought to what's next, what's the next step, always be thinking about that. But where do I want them to go next?
Love it. We're going to shift gears, Bill. Not only are you an author yourself, but you've authored and help authored many, many books. So, You know, I would I don't want to ask you the normal question. So, but let's talk a little bit, in terms of, consultants, professionals, speakers, coaches, those types of
Sure.
people. When you look at publishing, what do you think are some of the best options for them?
Hmm. Yeah. My answer is going to sound like I'm dodging the question, but I'm really not. The answer is it depends. I'm literally at any given time, we've got our hands in everything from someone who's purely self publishing. We offer really professional self publishing, all the way to high name, high recognition, traditional publishers, right? And everywhere in between. I literally was just working with half a dozen agents right now with a gentleman trying to find the right literary agent fit to pitch to a traditional publisher, right? So the answer is it depends. It depends a couple things. First of all, it depends on someone's platform, and then it depends on their audience, right? What kind of reach do they have? Because traditional publishers really want to know how many books are you going to sell if we do nothing without us? How many you're going to sell, and then if we can partner with you, how many might we sell together, and what might that look like? Because better than 70% of books lose money for traditional publishers, and so they're looking for the ones that that'll catch fire. But there's so many great options in the hybrid publishing space, whether it's with us at Storybuilders Press. I think you do some of this as well, and there are many others, and you can do them at a self-published level as well. The key for me is just the quality, right? It's
Yes.
easier than ever to bring a book to life, but the challenge is getting a book that you can really be proud of, that represents you and your brand exceptionally well, and that positions you then to monetize your whole entire IP, intellectual property ecosystem, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what it's really about. It's not a one and done. It's I want a book, and it fits into the bigger picture of my business of what I'm trying to accomplish. And so that's where we really love to hang out. So I think the word you mentioned drew out before, intentional. People being intentional
Yes.
about where do I want to go, which path best positions me for that, and that's the kind of stuff we do all day every day, helping people guide into the best path for them.
Yeah, ultimately our clients self-publish, but we help them do the complete process to self-publish.
Sure,
I don't have connections with the traditional publishers,
sure,
but I think, you talked about quality, and I think that is the key issue. If you can produce a quality book by yourself
sure,
and you want to do it, go for it.
sure.
But, unfortunately, and I've heard it out of gurus' mouths, so I'm not just making this up. I've actually heard people say this, but I've heard people say, well, just slap something together so that you can call yourself an author, you can write it in 3 days,
Right,
and
right,
you can be published in 30 days. and
right.
and I want to slap those people. I
Yeah,
really, really do, because those books are not effective.
sure,
And, especially when you're looking at, what we do at RTI Publishing is books that you use as marketing tools to build your business. They
sure.
have to be excellent. They're never going to be perfect. So audience,
Yeah.
if you're thinking I need a perfect book, please just like
Yeah.
strike that word out of your
Right.
vocabulary. It's
Right.
never going to happen.
Right.
But, an excellent book. And,
Yeah.
that quality, I think, is the issue. Whether you go through traditional, whether you go through hybrid, whether you completely self-publish,
Sure.
you have to put something out there that's just going to really impact your target market.
Right. Right. Yeah. Excellence never happens by accident. Right.
No.
And everything speaks, I like to say. Everything speaks. So about your brand and your business, everything you do says something. So if you put a book out there that, yeah, I threw this together in a weekend, or even worse yet, I used AI to throw some words on a page that now I don't, they're not even my words. I can't build IP on somebody else's words, right? So I basically I've run full speed down a dead end street and I have nowhere to go next, right? um, but
And then you wonder what happened to you when you hit the wall.
right, right. You wonder like why this whole book thing just didn't work out for me. Well, that's because you tried to take a shortcut, and
Mm.
a good friend of mine, Steve Smotherman, he's a pastor in New Mexico, a large church. He likes to say, you can either take shortcuts or detours, right? And shortcuts, trying to shortcut a challenge, shortcut your way around thing, usually just ends up as a detour. You end up back where you started. Except now you've got a higher cost, or you've got a problem to fix, or something like that. Instead of, if you'd just been willing to walk that path out in front of you and really do it well, and something you can be proud of. I mean, who wants to reach the end of their life and look back and say, yeah, I was an author, but I'd rather not mention it because I'm not really that proud of that book, right? If you're going to do it well. Do it in a way that for the rest of your life you can be proud of that product and it can help a lot of people.
Well, Bill, we are all pretty well out of time. So, what I'm going to do is give you time for one final thought. And if you have a gift or a resource that you would like to share with us, now would be the perfect time.
Sure. Well, the final thought I want to leave is again that every story matters, and we really believe that. And so, whatever your story is that you have had, that your idea, your message, it matters. And so, don't undervalue it. Treasure it, grow it, explore it, expand it in the way that I've talked about. My gift would really be if someone's listening, they're like, "Hey, I want to talk about the different options out there, and maybe I want a digital course, or I want a workshop or a training program or something around the ideas. Maybe I've worked with Kim and I've done a book and I want to do something. I want to be able to monetize that in other ways. I would just offer a totally free session with one of our senior story architects. And so I'll give you a link if that's all right, Kim, and they can just call and
Sure.
schedule time and talk through that. Just go to mystorybuilders.com/story, mystorybuilders.com/story, and just schedule time. There's no obligation. We're not going to push you or anything. We love stories. We love talking about them. And we'd be happy to say, yes, there's something there, or no, there's not, or, here are some thoughts, things you can develop, and just help you develop that story that you have into other things and find the best path forward.
Love it, Bill. Love it. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I have
Welcome.
thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think we're going to have you back because I think there's more things that you and I can talk about.
Well,
Oh.
given our love for story, I'm not surprised that would be the case. Yes.
The problem with these episodes is that I just want to keep them going. But,
Right.
half an hour is a good length of time for a
Yeah,
podcast because, you and I could probably talk for an hour and still have more to share.
I'm sure.
So, audience, where are you going to go next? I want to direct you to episode 504 with Devin Marks, TED style practices for authors. So, if you've ever thought about that TED talk, which ties in perfectly with today's conversation, I suggest you check out that episode. If you are watching on YouTube, you know the routine. My daughter has placed the thumbnail here on the screen for you to click. If you're on your favorite podcast app, either search for TED style practices, or you're going to use your finger and just scan back a few episodes to episode 404. Sorry, 504. You'll really be scanning back if you go to 404. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you on the very next episode. Bye now.